half mortal, half god, all heroes of Olympus. You're listening to Ranking Rick Riordan, a podcast where we rank every book in the Percy Jackson / Rick Riordan Mythological Universe. Today we're brought to you by Auntie M's Garden Emporium. I'm Dan.
I'm Olga.
And I'm Clara, and I'm reeling from that ad. And today we're discussing the Heroes of Olympus, Book 3, The Mark of Athena.
Woo!
Get your own centaur statue for your lawn today.
Alrighty, shall we get right into it? Because there's a lot of recap to cap.
Yes, there is.
Let's cap it.
Okay. Whoa, we are all so lame. Ugh, it's painful. All right, so we left with the gang heading to Charleston to look for the map. Jason suggests the map might be at Fort Sumter or the Battery, a place he and Raina had been together. Roman eagles are right on their tail, so Leo sends Buford, along with Frank's laundry, as a decoy. To add insult to injury, Leo also makes fun of Frank for not understanding Chinese handcuffs.
So, I mean, we talked about this last time as far as your displeasure at Leo's meanness.
Yeah. Teenagers are jerks.
Yeah, it's true.
But only some teenagers, as this book seemingly is indicating. All right. Anyway, Annabeth thinks back to the meeting she had with her mother a few months ago. She had seemed confused and didn't even recognize Annabeth. Annabeth questioned if the goddess was actually Minerva, her Roman form, but the goddess yelled at her to never call her by that name. She claimed that she had been Athena before the Romans had destroyed Athens, taken away her title as a war goddess, and stolen her statue. In order to avenge her, she ordered Annabeth to follow the Mark of Athena and handed her a small silver coin. She added that if Annabeth would help the Romans, she would be no child of hers.
So, and the other thing I didn't write in the recap here is that the invisibility cap stopped working after this encounter,
Right.
Mhm.
which was it hit me in the heart a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It just kind of shows how Annabeth is afloat on her own and really feels lost throughout this process, and that's difficult to stomach.
Yeah. And I think it was really cool to see a very, like, I don't feel like we've seen a scene with a god like this before. And to really see the intensity of how the Roman Greek thing is affecting her, especially, and also to have them. I mean, we haven't had one of our main characters have their parent like really be mad at them before.
Yeah.
So I thought that was cool.
Yeah, they tried to do that with Ares and Clarice, but
Yeah.
it didn't really go anywhere.
Yeah. And I just think it was very different when it's Clarice, who's not someone you're like as sympathetic with. But,
Right.
Yeah, that was done to build sympathy instead of,
Yeah. You still like the Romans, Clara, after what they did to Athena? You still like them?
yeah. I'm Team Juno. Team Juno for life.
Right, of course. All right, so Frank interrupts Annabeth's ruminations and asks her to teach him about Chinese handcuffs. Annabeth uses her laptop to scan the toy and shows Frank how it works. Frank wonders if Annabeth really had to bring it up on the computer, and she admits that she sometimes forgets to keep it simple. Yeah, that didn't require like a 3D rendering and like physics to explain.
Yeah. I mentioned last week, I think that this is one of my favorite scenes in the book. I think that I wish there were more moments like this, honestly, where like an unlikely pairing had just like really cool connecting moment. And but when we don't have Frank having his own perspective, I think him coming to Annabeth and trusting her says a lot about her and about him. And it's really cute.
Yeah, it's sweet.
Yeah.
Yep.
Once docked at Charleston, Annabeth, Hazel, and Piper search for the ghost of the Battery, while Frank, Leo, and Jason search Fort Sumter. The girls approach the spirit, who's actually Aphrodite. She sits them down for tea and begins to give Annabeth and Hazel some beauty tips before Piper stops her. After remembering all the parties in the old days of the South.
Why don't we actually pause there?
Sure.
And just sort of talk about the depiction of the Civil War and Venus and Aphrodite throughout this, because it's certainly a touchy area.
So I think this starts a little bit before. There's a really problematic dialogue between Jason and Hazel talking about that CSS Hunley submarine. I'll read it because I think the language is actually really important, if that's okay with you guys. we learn that the Romans had designed this submarine, which was a Confederate submarine.
Mm-hmm.
And then we get Hazel crossed her arms. So the Romans fought on the Confederate side. As a girl whose grandmother was a slave, can I just say, not cool? Jason put his hands in front of him, palms up. I personally was not alive then, and it wasn't all Greeks on one side and all Romans on the other. But yes, not cool. Sometimes demigods make bad choices. He looked sheepishly at Hazel. Like sometimes we're too suspicious and we speak without thinking. So first we get a sort of like, my grandma was a slave, so that's not cool that the Confederacy, like, that's...
The Confederacy stinks. Boo!
Not cool. And then Jason, like, whose whiteness, I would say, is, like, emphasized a lot. Mm-hmm. Like, his, like, blonde hair, blue eyes thing is, like, a central part of his character at this point.
Yep.
Yeah.
And his first response to hearing this is, well, I wasn't alive then, which is a problem, not because it's not true, but because, like, that's never what this conversation is about when we're talking about a heritage and legacy of owning slaves or fighting for slavery.
Obviously you weren't there, Jason. Like, no one is accusing you of that. That has nothing to do with it. Yeah, I think I was also really caught off guard by this passage. I was just like, why is this written this way? It was really jarring of, like, it needed to be addressed that it wasn't all one side on the Confederacy and all the other side on the Union.
Yeah,
like,
that's the one part of this that I think was good.
Right.
I just don't think they handled it well.
No. From Hazel being like, just being very relaxed about it to just Jason's like whataboutism, I guess, is the closest I can. The problem isn't specifically that Jason is being like bad about this. The problem is in the real world, in the world we're in, the whole thing, well, I wasn't there, so I shouldn't have to apologize for it, is like a real argument that is appropriated by people who don't want to discuss racial issues in the United States. So that is the problem is more about the meta narrative, but this is the issue of when you're addressing the ramifications of slavery and the Civil War, you have to be, if you're gonna talk about it, you kind of have to be smarter about it.
To me, it goes beyond needing to address it because of, hey, the Romans and the Greeks, that's like what led to them being split up. I think that this series in general is very much about the United States and about visiting important landmarks and things like that, and you can't do that and never address it at all. I agree that they could have addressed it better, but the thing that stuck out to me more than this personally was when they went to Atlanta and Kokeg was like, yeah, they burned down Atlanta. That was awesome. Like, and
that was uncomfortable.
I understand that that's like his character, but like, you don't want to connect that part of his character with real world events.
Like, let's not connect the war crimes aspect with our characters. Not ideal.
I think what's done well is a little bit later on, now jumping back sort of closer to where we are in the recap, there's a really great passage, which Dan, I think gets to like what the series does really well is about like landmarks, right? And pointing out that you can't go into the South and not see the legacy of slavery. That should be true in the North, but like it's not. And that's an interesting thing to think about. But we get this passage that says, Annabeth shivered. She loved the architecture here. The houses and the gardens were very beautiful, very Roman. But she wondered why beautiful things had to be wrapped up with evil history. Or was it the other way around? Maybe the evil history made it necessary to build beautiful things to mask the darker aspects. I think that's a really interesting idea. And thinking about like landmarks and legacy of like what landmarks mean, what history means when it's in a space, like that's really interesting. He could have had that, like, I don't know. I feel like it was a sort of hit and miss with most of this, but that was something I really appreciated.
I think if they cut out the line of Jason saying, I wasn't there, if you just said, well, actually there were Romans on Greeks on both sides, and they hadn't immediately led into him talking about something way less important, which was their drama. I think that would have helped enormously. Now, I'm interested in hearing what you guys think about this entire Venus Aphrodite passage in relation to her in the South, because to me this scene was I felt like the scene was pretty uncomfortable, and I guess it's maybe supposed to be, but it felt like a step backward for her character to me.
I agree completely, and I couldn't really tell if that was because Venus was coming out more, so she didn't care about Piper as much because she wasn't a daughter of Venus, she was a daughter of Aphrodite.
Yeah.
But I mean, it kind of makes sense. People, on the one hand, it makes sense. On the other hand, I didn't feel like the scene was like that great.
Yeah.
It makes sense that she would romanticize war. Like war is romanticized, and the star-crossed love and tragedy of that is something that people look into for even now, like as escapes. Like you use the man going off to war, like that's a trope in romance novels to this day, and I feel like the whole thing is Aphrodite treats them as a romance novel. Like she just thinks about the parties and the beauties and beautiful nature of all of it, and it's like, right, but we really aren't balancing that enough.
And I think that Rick was trying to make a commentary about that.
Yeah.
I just don't know exactly.
So like the Old South is romanticized, and like this takes place in the Old South. This is all about like the symbols of the Old South, like Aphrodite or Venus says, love and war always go together. They're the peaks of human emotion, evil and good, beauty and ugliness. And like, there's something there. There's some comment about that, but like the Old South, like that's not like, there's that, you can't.
It's not just ugliness. It is, again, going back to it, crimes against humanity. And I mean, the thing is that the whole thing is at the time it's dehumanization, and therefore it's not a crime against humanity if you see people as subhuman, which is like, and that's the thing of just conflating the Confederate South and the Civil War with, war and ugliness. I'm like, no, it's far more than that. And this doesn't. Yeah.
I think there's also a weird thing that's happening here where the Old South, so like the Old South is this like essential, it's like white, right? It's this white history thing. And it's also really weird that we're in Charleston and like it's about whiteness. Like Black history isn't really brought in except slavery. Like that, like it's not giving people agency. It's not like it's not Black history here doesn't have agency, and the Old South is about whiteness. And like,
but I also think it's meant to be critiquing that. That's the thing that's complicated about it. I think you're supposed to not like Aphrodite and Venus, and you're supposed to say, hey, people who romanticize this time are messed up.
I don't know how to respond to that.
Sorry, that was Siri, and I don't know how that happened.
I was like, Clara doesn't. That sounds weird. Clara's saying that she doesn't know how to respond to that. I don't really know what to say to that. That's odd.
That's funny.
All of this is just, it's not explored enough for a young audience to know whether is the Old South this romantic concept, because it's not problematized enough. Like kids know that there was slavery. And so that's like mentioned, but it's still this like gloss over sort of a thing, because we don't get a Black perspective, except for Hazel saying like, my grandmother was a slave, not cool, which is like, okay.
I think something that so in the Apollo books, instead of like going to 30 places, they mostly go to a place in the US and stay there for the book. And I think that if you did something like that for this location and actually gave the book time to breathe. The problem is that he's trying to hit on these themes really quickly as they're in Charleston for 2 chapters out of 80 or whatever, like, and I just don't think, I think if you're going to try to do it that quickly, you might as well just not try at all to a certain degree. Like,
I feel like I am concerned about the harm versus good balance of this scene, of what this does to /for Aphrodite's character. I don't want her to be on the side of this, like, sympathizers, albeit like calling out a trope. I just feel like all of this could have been handled better. I think that we've kind of hit on this. So let's, all right. So getting back to the recap, She mentions Athena and explains that the Greeks never forgave the Romans for stealing the Athena Parthenos, which has been missing ever since. Just then, several war eagles appear, and Aphrodite tells them that the map is at Fort Sumter. Octavian cuts them off with 2 minions. Annabeth tosses her knife into the water when Octavian tells them to lower their weapons. The water around the rock erupts as Percy traps the Roman soldiers in a whirlpool. I really like this.
Yep.
Nice.
Teamwork.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Romantic teamwork. Annabeth orders the demigods on board to defend the ship while she rushes into the fort to find the map. She enters a room looking for the map, and the walls begin to fill with spiders. While Annabeth is frozen by fear, Gia tells her that she will meet the Weaver soon.
I want to say, that I like that they flashed back to her, like, that they kind of explained that the spiders were what made her run away in the first place and stuff like that. And I'm pretty sure the first time I was reading this, or maybe the first time I was reading this recently, was right around when we had a humongous spider infestation in this very room.
Oh, it was awful.
It was like
horrifying.
literally hundreds of spiders.
Oh my God.
Hundreds of spiders.
I hadn't heard about this. You guys, oh no.
They were everywhere. And they're mostly babies, but they were everywhere.
Yeah, they were. So the whole thing was that I found the parent spider later on, but there were hundreds of baby spiders everywhere in this room, in every corner, and for a full week I was still killing them. And I don't like spiders.
Nope.
They were in our headphones. They were on the wall. It was awful, Clara. I don't recommend it.
Really bad.
I don't want it.
I definitely related to this.
If I was reading this or listening to it at the time, I think I would have just burned this room to the ground. I know we're renting, but I would have been like, no, you don't understand. I had to do it. And there were spiders. Awful, 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 awful. Thanks for reminding me of that, Dan. As we come to the summer and our air conditioner might be the problem once again.
Yep.
Oh no. God, it's so bad. Annabeth is confronted by Raina and her 2 dogs. When Annabeth starts to explain how Gia is trying to separate the camps, Raina tells her to save it for her trial, which of course they will lose and therefore be executed. At least
save it for execution.
Yeah. Save it for your rigged trial, Annabeth. Raina says that if Octavian doesn't get blood here, he will set his sights on Camp Half-Blood. This saddens Annabeth, but she claims that she can fix the rift between the 2 camps and thus persuades Raina into letting her go.
I really like Raina.
I know. Raina's a great person. I mean, that's the thing where they're like parallels for each other, because Annabeth was the daughter of the Greek war god and Raina is the daughter of the Roman war god. Yep. So it's like, even though they're not half siblings, they have so much in common. That's great.
Yeah.
She runs back to the ship while Jason and Percy call forth a storm to push the Romans back. They set sail to the Mediterranean Sea and Rome in order to save Nico and find the Athena Parthenos. Leo and Hazel talk about Sammy, and she takes him into one of her memories. We see how similar Sammy was to Leo and then flash to his future. Sammy was Leo's great-grandfather and always blamed himself for Hazel's disappearance. He asked baby Leo to look out for Hazel for him.
I enjoy this enough. I don't really know what the whole point of all this was when you really think about it. Like, it was to cause trouble for half a book, I guess. But I don't know.
Nah,
weird. It doesn't seem particularly necessary.
It's fine.
Yeah. Like, they could have just had her, like, actually be endeared to Leo, and I would have been okay with that.
Yeah. I think that arguably, not that I'm, like, the biggest fan of love triangles, but I mean, the thing is, by having people paired off and Leo really being like, am I the third wheel? I mean, I guess I like Hazel, but like, she seems kind of obsessed with me too. Like, it was just a very weird, it wasn't a real love triangle. So it was just kind of not half baked. I think he put a lot of effort into this. It was more just like, I didn't feel like it added so much to my...
I didn't dislike it, but... Yeah.
This is like kind of unrelated, but I forgot to bring it up, is that Annabeth in one of her chapters, and it was when she was like with Aphrodite or whatever, she says, Luke Castellan, like, my first crush. And I was like,
they totally retcon it back.
Yeah.
Well, like unretcon.
Yeah. He goes back to his first draft.
Yep.
Yeah, that was a good catch.
Yep.
Yeah. The 2 come out of the flashback holding hands as the ship is attacked by a giant shrimp monster. Ultimately, they defeat it, but Hazel, Frank, and Leo are lost at the bottom of the sea. Leo and Frank wake up in an underwater prison, and Frank admits he's afraid of Leo's fire. Leo starts to understand Frank better and feels a bit guilty about how he's treated him. He tells Frank he's not making a move on his girl. Later, Hazel seems almost disappointed about that.
So that's the one thing that I personally do kind of like, that they kind of just leave it there where Hazel does still kind of be like, okay, but like she ultimately does prefer Frank, but like she did have an actual questioning here. I thought it was okay. Yeah.
So it turns out that the trio were just being kept there to be questioned by the ichthyocentaurs. They have a cool underwater camp for heroes and a great home economics teacher. I love him. They agree to send a quest to save the sea creatures from Forces.
Yeah, this is all just pretty solid comedy. The whole Bill thing and the brownies that everybody dies over. And...
Yeah, the great Bill. They return to the boat, and the Argo 2 sails to the Pillars of Hercules. Oh, just as a note, I really like the fact that Percy is like, they didn't want to meet me.
Yeah,
but I'm the son of Poseidon. Okay, and then with Hercules later, he's like, and I don't get to go meet Hercules. Like, what is going on? I'm supposed to be special.
I had a pentology.
Yeah, Percy's just an adorable, good character, and I can't help but feel like Jason is he just pales in comparison to how great Percy is.
I agree, but at the same time, this is another example of Percy's fatal flaw, where he's just like, but I'm supposed to be the one getting to meet people and doing things. Yeah. I'm the B team. I'm not the B team.
Yeah, I love.
Well, it's interesting because he and Jason kind of have the same arc going on this book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's why I find it so, like, I think that's why Percy's stuff, I'm just like, well, when Percy does it, I'm sympathetic and I love him and he's great. When Jason does it, I'm like, okay, you probably deserve this. I don't know. Like,
harsh. Don't completely disagree, but harsh. Okay, so at the Pillars of Hercules, they realize they need Hercules' permission to enter the Mediterranean. So Piper and Jason disembark to talk to him. Hercules is bitter and gets angry when he finds out the seven are on a quest for Hera. He demands they steal the horn of Achilles to humiliate the god even further, as Hercules had already taken his other horn. Achilles is sad and lonely after Hercules, quote, stole Deianira, the woman who was promised to him. He doesn't want to hurt Piper, but he refuses to give up his horn, so they face off. Ultimately, Piper tricks him and steals his horn to save Jason. And there's a lot of stuff of like, why would you waste your time on another son of Jupiter / Zeus?
Yeah.
Don't you know what they're like? You'll be bitterly disappointed.
And you should be my bride. And blah, blah, blah. There's a lot to unpack here. Let's just finish the recap and we can talk about this as a whole.
Hercules gives them permission to pass, but Piper refuses to give him the horn. She hates Hercules and doesn't think he deserves something as precious as the cornucopia. This angers Hercules, and he prepares to kill them all, but Piper releases an unprecedented amount of food from the cornucopia, which completely buries the god. Jason then flies them to the ship, and they take off.
So I'm just going to start this off by saying this was a quest that I liked the first time I read it. On the second reading of it, I think it's pretty flawed, personally. Like, I enjoy it enough, but I don't actually agree with Piper's assessment of Hercules and Achilles. I think she's too mean to Hercules and not mean enough to Achilles.
Yeah.
So I'm with you, Dan, where the first time I read it, I was like, no, this makes sense. This is like Piper's jealousy and concern. Like, she's moving past it. She's realizing what kind of person Jason is, and he's not the person that she's afraid of. Like, she can trust him. But I did reread it right before we did this podcast, and I'm like, I don't think she's too mean to Hercules. I think she's still appropriately mean to him because he's choosing to be bitter. He's choosing his spite and hatred and like giving into the things. Like, he has Zeus's worst qualities of like the arrogance and the infidelity and all of that.
I guess what I really mean is that in comparison to how she treats Achilles, what happened to him isn't that bad. Hercules was forced to murder his family, and she's like, I don't feel any sympathy for you.
Right. But here's the thing: the whole one of the points of this book is our seven coming to terms with the flawed nature of the gods. Like, they've already noticed how flawed they are, but they really, I think a major point here is like, wow, the gods really treat us like garbage. They really take advantage of us. They don't care about what the ramifications of their actions are when it comes to us. And I don't know how much that pays off in other books. I hope it keeps, building up. I don't know how much it can, because, it's still supposed to be the fun children of gods. But like, between Bacchus and the commentary on like Hera drove him mad, but he had to pay for it. All of that is really interesting.
Percy even goes, maybe Luke had a point.
Yes, he does. That's my favorite. I have that highlighted later on. It's so good.
But the thing that on the reread that I actually did take issue with is the fact that Piper is like crying over Achilles and being, I'm like, it's the subtext here is that actually Deianira didn't want to marry him either, and that he was he just tried to kidnap you too. He
comes off like an incel, to be honest.
That's what I was gonna say. It's like a friend zone type weirdness that
she was my prize, and he was taken from me.
She went for that Chad Hercules, and look what that ended up as.
And
so
I mean,
I'll save you from that.
I feel bad that his horn was taken away, and if it was just that he accepted that she left, but was sad that she ended up getting killed because of Hercules. Like, there are things about this that I understand where Piper's coming from. But overall, I don't know. When I just accepted Piper's take on this, I was like, yeah, good thing.
Right.
But when you really think about it yourself, I mean, I do like that Piper fights against Hercules and overcomes that and all that stuff. Like, that's all good for Piper, but I don't know.
I just feel like Achilles' characterization isn't quite as in line with Piper's sympathy for him.
They even call back to it, like, later in the book, he looks at the cornucopia and still feels sad. And I'm like, oh, come on. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, it was a little weird.
Yeah, I feel like I'm so sad because I feel like I'm coming off so negative. But like, I freaking love this book, but I don't. But there are problems. The more you read it, the more you notice things.
So we'll see when the ranking time comes. We'll see. All right, so as they sail through the Mediterranean, another ship rams into the Argo too. In an instant, the entire ship is overrun by dolphin pirates and their captain, Chrysaor. Chrysaor's crew defeat everyone on board and start to ransack the ship, stealing everything of value. Chrysaor begins to make plans, including selling Hazel and Piper to Circe. Really uncomfortable, once again, if we remember Hazel and what she said earlier. So
also, it doesn't seem like it quite lines up with Circe in general.
Just saying. While keeping Annabeth and Percy for a sacrifice to Gia. Percy faces off with Chrysaor, but quickly realizes his sword fighting skills have gotten rusty as Chrysaor defeats him with ease. Percy realizes that the Dolphin Men are terrified of Dionysus. With the help of Hazel, Piper, and Frank, Percy tricks them into thinking the great and terrible Mr. D is coming for them. The pirates flee, Chrysaor is defeated, and Percy sinks his ship by filling it with Diet Coke and offering it to Dionysus as a tribute.
I think this is a fantastic vignette here. One of Percy's best moments.
I love it. I love him having to use brains over brawn and being outmatched. Like, so good, so interesting,
so great.
And the fact that even though he saves them, he feels like he failed afterward, which I thought was really cool. And paying off Mr. D and his dolphin thing, never would have thought that.
Right? Skillfully done.
And it's based on a myth.
Yeah. So good. Yeah, and I think Chrysaor is a really cool villain that I wish we got more of, honestly. But
it makes it seem like he's gonna come back later, but I don't know if he does.
Not that
someday.
I'm aware of.
They land in Rome and start to make plans. Annabeth and Percy will head to the Tiber River, while Hazel, Leo, and Frank try to find Nico. Percy and Annabeth arrive at the spot on Athena's map, but they are unsure of what to do and end up having lunch. I really love the whole ignorant American tourist thing that Percy's got going on.
Make me a pizza.
I love Percy.
Oh, it's so uncomfortable. Oh, it's so bad. My mom and I have been those tourists, not in Italy specifically, but I just cringe. I cringe. Soon, a Vespa pulls up to the table and two people that look like old movie stars appear, introducing themselves as Tiberinus and Rhea Silvia. They offer to bring Annabeth to the start of her quest and tell Percy that Piper's knife will lead them to the giants.
A lot to unpack. Yeah, let's first just talk about how do you guys feel about the depiction of Rome in general. It's another big location that they dive into quite a bit.
I really like it. Having been to Rome since I first read this, I really liked it. Just the getting lost. It is really hard to not get lost in Rome, even if you're looking at a map like a crazy tourist. Like it's really hard to navigate and pointing that out and just like all of the. I really liked it a lot.
I think they do a good job of the fact that they have two different groups walking around, noticing different landmarks. They point out a ton of different stuff.
I mean, there are so many like great Rome specific things that happen here. And it does the typical like Percy Jackson verse thing of like, here's this and that and that. But at the same time, the comparison, just like the feeling of the ancientness and the history of a massive European city versus all of the stuff in the United States. There's just a non-specific Roman mood here too that I just get, and that puts me in that nostalgic place of when I was like wandering through an old city and it's like, here's a brand new building in a parking lot and here is a several hundred, if not 1,000-year-old church. And they're just like right next to each other and it's bananas.
I also really appreciated that. So like the forum is a sort of like, it's like, and then there's the forum, which like isn't what it used to be clearly. And so what it does is like, it makes Rome still a living city. It's not just about the old thing that isn't used anymore, even though there's a lot about the ghosts and, you know, like the nymphs who get stuck. Like, it's about the life of the city that's continued on in its own way, which I find really great.
Yeah. I remember when I was first reading this, before we got to Rome, that I was a little apprehensive of them leaving America. I really like that the Percy Jackson books are very much about American landmarks and things like that. And I think when we got to Rome, they turned me around pretty quickly.
He pulled this off. Yeah, the tone of it was just so good. And I really also, just as a more specific thing here, I really like Tiberinus and Rhea Silvia. Like, I just like how they are the, you know, was it Clark Gable and Audrey Hepburn? Like, you know, just that, how they present themselves. And they're that thing of like, it's still classic compared to modern day, but it's still brand new. And it was so
they're a fun
Roman
pair.
Holiday kind of vibe.
And the fact that we get a little bit of backstory about Annabeth and her dad from that too, I think is cool.
And I was like confused at first, like why are they like why are these like sort of personifications of Italy American? And then I thought about it and I was like, ooh, because it's about like America's view of Italy, because the gods are like quote American now, and that's actually really smart. Well done. Good job, Rick.
Yeah.
Cool.
This collection of chapters is just like capturing an attitude and mood, commenting on many things, and just pulling things together really well.
And the thing we haven't talked about with this section is this is, again, maybe one of my favorite Percy moments in the whole series, as far as him struggling with both his relationship, but more importantly, his fatal flaw, and him really being tested for the first time with that. And the struggle you see him going through. And I thought it was awesome.
Remember when I said I didn't believe that was Percy's fatal flaw? Like a total idiot? Well,
that's
it really pays off.
That's because it wasn't his fatal flaw in his own pentology. All right. So the gods drop Annabeth off at the Roman underground and she delves below the city. Annabeth reaches a large chasm and laments the fact that she doesn't have any special powers or magic items. After making a rope ladder of plastic swords and kite string, Annabeth descends into darkness. She enters the shrine to the god Mithras, littered with the skeletons of children of Athena. Several ghostly worshippers of Mithras appear and ask Annabeth a series of questions about the god. Despite Annabeth not knowing anything about him, there are clues all around the room, and Annabeth manages to fool them into believing she knows everything about their god. As a show of power, she then hits a capstone holding the room together, and the shrine begins to crumble. Annabeth escapes the room, but falls down a small pit and ends up breaking her ankle. I love this.
Yep.
So cool.
Oh my God.
I adore whenever he brings in gods from other cultures and things like that, and the history of how they interact with each other, I think is really cool. And I will, I just think Annabeth's awesome. Yeah.
Annabeth is awesome. The other thing I love about this, and this is again, like, I feel like with these books, you're really seeing Rick's nerdy side coming out, and he's like loving it because this is what archaeologists do. This is what historians do. These mystery cults, like, we don't have a written like guide to them. We don't have like, sometimes we do, sometimes we don't, like authoritative texts about them. And you piece together these clues. And seeing how excited Rick is and making that like this heroic thing is just the coolest. It's the best. God, this might be this I think supplants my favorite scene before this, which was Annabeth in the labyrinth and the standardized test thing. This might be my favorite scene thus far.
And she uses architecture as a weapon.
Yeah.
Which I think is awesome.
This is just is incredible. This is great.
This is, to me, you're absolutely right, but this about the comparison between the labyrinth and this scene, like that was her being like cocky and it hurting her and like hampering her, and here it's her being like, it's just my mind. It's her being more mature. Like she's grown up too. I mean, I know they've characterized Annabeth as like the smart, wise one since the beginning, but like, no, she had room to grow up as well. And they like underestimate her. And frankly, I even like the fact that she gets injured after this, because I think that is just like such, as a reader, that's like, oh my God, but she is capable physically. And now she can't even like rely on that. Like she really has to use her wits and her everything. She really is alone without the magic items, without any power, just her mind. And it like is such an interesting read. Annabeth takes some ambrosia and makes a splint out of bubble wrap and string. For her last test, Annabeth scares off spiders with fire and weaves a pathway across a large ditch. Annabeth then enters a large room lined with beautiful tapestries, but is quickly captured by their weaver, Arachne.
Ooh.
I like that Annabeth has to weave. That was great. It's instinctive for her, you know, daughter of Athena. Still a great weaver. The best weaver, she might say.
Or not.
Right. Dan, you commented separately about the mystery of who the weaver might be.
The fact that they keep off saying Arachne for so long. I mean, like, at least it's not like the characters don't know who it is, but I do not understand why they didn't say the word Arachne until she got here. Like, especially because, you know, we talked earlier in the book about how Narcissus and Echo is like one of the go-to myths that you learn when you're like 10. I feel like Arachne is another one of those. So
I'm inclined to agree. Meanwhile, Leo, Hazel, and Frank find their way to the Pantheon, and Leo quickly spots a secret entryway to the underground. Hazel scouts ahead, leaving Leo and Frank alone together. The two open up a bit, with Leo even pointing out they both lost their mothers. Leo even offers to find a way to help Frank find a solution to keep his stick safe.
See, Leo's nice sometimes.
He gets there.
That's the point. He has an arc.
Sure. I agree with you. You guys convinced me. All right.
This is like side note, but this is one of these other like descriptions that just resonated so much for me. The Pantheon is my favorite place in Rome. When I went there, I just started crying. It was very embarrassing. But the description, just like it was really great. It was
nice.
That's all. I loved it.
Eidolons appear, forcing Leo and Frank down the hole, where they meet back up with Hazel. They find a room full of failed duplicates of Archimedes' inventions, including a few automatons. The Eidolons take control of the automatons and an electric sphere, quickly knocking out Hazel and Frank. But Leo escapes into a control room and locks it behind him. Leo finds a control sphere for everything in the shop, but is unable to find the right password before the Eidolons turn their attention to Frank and Hazel. Leo uses the fortune cookie Nemesis gave him to ask for the password, allowing him to take control of the machines and defeat the Eidolons.
I like this enough. I don't have a whole lot of thoughts about it. But...
Good action.
My only thing, the action was good. I had a hard time visualizing this. To be fair,
the sphere.
I know. I remember being very interested in Archimedes when I was younger. I feel like I remember the Mythbusters episode about his like laser and being kind of going off on a tangent, like researching that. So for whatever reason, even though this like harkens back to that time for me personally. I didn't really understand what was.
Yeah.
I was just like, and then this happens, and then this happens, and it was exciting.
The two things I do like about this are, one, that the Eidolons come back. I think that's nice to have that sort of ranking throughout the thing, and Leo being the one to defeat them, considering what they did to him at the beginning. And I do really like him being so like not understanding that he's really talking smack against the Romans and how that bothers the other two.
Yeah. But there is an interesting arc here, because Frank earlier, when they were underwater, he criticizes Leo. Oh, you only care about the ship. You don't care about your friends. And this is the thing where here he has to really think about the machines and his excitement versus his friends and his relationship to them. It comes around. I appreciate
much like
that.
a sphere.
Sure. When Hazel questions why her senses led her to this workshop, they find Nico's sword and realize it was a trap.
You know what I wish? Because I'm reading House of Hades now. I wish that Nico had been in the other, like one of the other books a bit more.
Yeah.
So that the level of suspense with trying to get to him before he dies was a little more.
Yeah.
Obviously, love Nico so much, you all know.
Yep.
But like looking back on this now, it would have been even more if we had him there in one of the books.
Yeah. It would have been actually kind of cool if instead of Gia just like mentioning it, there was like an epilogue to Son of Neptune where we see him get captured.
Yeah.
And then they find out about it at the beginning of Mark of Athena.
Yeah.
That would be great.
Yeah.
For the reader to have that cliffhanger and be like, oh my God, not Nico.
Yeah.
Oh, and he's going to be more important. Like,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. I think that could have been
that would have been really.
Yeah.
Percy returns to the Argo 2 and asks Piper to look in Catoptris for a way to the giants. It shows a staircase near the Forum, a place the knife had shown them all drowning earlier. Percy goes down first in case there is water, and they arrive at a nymphaeum. Soon, the nymph Hagno and her entourage appear and flood the chamber with evil water, not just regular water. Percy is unable to breathe, and the nymphs begin to drain the three of their power. Piper comes up with a plan to funnel all their positive thoughts into the cornucopia, which releases the positive emotions as clean water. The nymphs become young again and spare the three and tell them the location of Otis and Ephialtes.
So, I mean, the one thing I didn't mention here is the whole like dead dog folklore thing. I don't know enough about that to know how people might have felt about that. It seemed like it was nicely done. I still personally would have wanted this to be a Percy chapter because he's facing his greatest fear.
Right.
But
this was odd. I like the bones of it, but just the fact that they're like, we just have to use positive thinking and that'll heal them, like felt strange. And it didn't have like other repercussions. They just like do that and succeed. Like there wasn't even that much tension about like, Percy having to overcome his fear of drowning and that, you know, that kind of thing. We're not in his head, so that doesn't hit quite as much. But it's not even as much about Percy and Jason working together and getting past their differences, or like Piper uniting them that much. Or it is, again, I do like the fact that she uses her her culture and folklore to like come to this conclusion. And
the fact that it's not just power of positive thinking, that they channel it into the cornucopia, which he won earlier, and that provides the clean water. I don't know.
Right.
I think it's pretty solid personally.
It's solid. I just again wish that the whole Percy and Jason thing mattered more.
Yeah. Fair enough.
The trio quickly arrive at the lair and come face to face with the giants. The twins discuss their big plan to release monsters into Rome and destroy it with style. They dump out a nearly dead Nico, and Percy tries to keep the giants distracted as Nico wakes up. The three attack, and all Hades breaks loose. A Hydra is released, leading Percy to set off a large stack of fireworks, which destroys the Hydra, but also destroys many different areas of the twins' hypogeum. Sure. Piper is knocked out, but Jason and Percy turn the twins to dust. Unfortunately, the giants need to be killed by a god and demigod working together.
Unless they're in Alaska.
Right. Stupid Rome, where giants are hard to kill. Bacchus appears on the scene and raises them into the Colosseum. He refuses to help unless the demigods can entertain him. Screw you, Bacchus. Mm-hmm. Jason and Percy fight as one and do pretty dang well, but are ultimately in a bit of a pickle. Luckily, the Argo 2 appears and blasts the giants with Greek fire. Bacchus considers this entertaining enough and stabs both giants with his thyrsus, defeating them. Before leaving, Bacchus informs them of the best place to reach Annabeth.
I like that Hedge gets to use his Greek fire catapult thingies. He's helpful in this book, so
Yeah.
I do appreciate that.
Overall, I like Hedge in this book, yeah.
We already talked about the Luke thing. I think I think underneath the Hypogeum is more exciting than once they go to the Colosseum, but still kind of fun.
Yeah.
Again, the most interesting thing about this is that undercurrent of like the gods actually do suck.
Yeah.
I love that this series comes after that last one. Like, it's my favorite thing that like different series do. Like Star Wars sort of does this as well, kind of in a way, where they're like, but what if the enemies in the last one were right? Like, I love that as a thing that creators do. So I love it here, and it's done so well at the end.
Yeah.
Back on the ship, Nico says he knows where the doors of death are located. One in a temple in Greece called the House of Hades, and one in Tartarus. The demigods agree to worry about this later and head off to save Annabeth.
Question. Did this like immediately tip you off that, oh, I guess someone's going to Tartarus?
Yeah.
All right. That's a bummer.
It didn't tip me off. I've forgotten.
Okay.
Well,
there you go.
I've read this.
The thing that it makes me worry about that might be a latent sort of hint of a spoiler that you gave me back in the summer when you were listening to these is I'm like, how are they going to close the doors without someone staying behind?
Who's to say?
Who's to say? Speaking of Annabeth, she's still trapped by Arachne. So despite being terrified, she quickly devises a plan to use Arachne's hubris against her. Annabeth tells Arachne that she is the new architect of Olympus, and she can display her tapestries on Mount Olympus, which would be a great insult to Athena. Arachne is slowly sucked into Annabeth's words and agrees to make something to be displayed right in the Hall of the Gods. Annabeth shows Arachne a picture of Frank's Chinese finger cuffs on her laptop. When she finishes, Annabeth points out a flaw in the middle. Arachne, unbelieving, goes inside to check and finds herself stuck when she tries to pull herself free. Annabeth's own hubris shows itself when she teases Arachne that she has done Athena a great service by keeping the statue safe. Arachne thrashes around, almost destroying the floor below them, leading directly to Tartarus. Thankfully, the Argo tube blasts a hole in the ceiling, and a car sends Arachne spiraling into the pit.
All right. I like the Chekhov's Chinese finger handcuffs thing.
Yeah.
Awesome to bring that back. I really like the interactions between Arachne and Annabeth even using a little bit of the hurt and resentment that she does feel about what happened with her mom to, further this. And then her using Arachne's hubris against her and then falling prey to her own is just an awesome.
So good.
Yeah. This was a scene or a series of scenes where all of the visuals made sense to me. I could follow along everything that was happening. I could imagine Athena Parthenos with the
webbing.
Yeah, with the webbing, but also with like the thing in her hand. I forget.
Nike, yes.
Like all of it, and even the descriptions of the tapestries that Arachne could make, like everything about this was so visually exciting, interesting, different. Annabeth's mind is just, I love this scene a lot.
Well, and this also adds into the theme you were talking about earlier, as far as the gods kind of sucking, as far as like, it seems clear that Athena wasn't as good. And
yeah. Again, another thing of stupid, arrogant gods. A thread attaches itself to Annabeth's leg and pulls her into the pit. Percy manages to grab her arm and holds her, preventing them from falling, but still unable to pull himself up. He makes Nico promise to take the others to the doors of death and then lets go of the ledge. The couple falls into Tartarus, holding hands. Back on... I know!
So awesome, payoff for them being separated before and for, everything Percy had gone through and just the romance in general. I think this is the best cliffhanger of any of the books. No pun intended. And yeah, I mean, usually it's like, wow, we have a big thing ahead of us, as opposed to, like, this feels much more like real cliffhanger. And I really enjoy it.
Yeah. Back on the ship, Leo blames himself for losing Percabeth and believes they were the price of using Nemesis' fortune cookie. So they set sail for Greece, with Leo saying, "Festus, raise the sails. We've got some friends to save." Okay, so that's that.
All
in
right.
terms of the recap.
All right, let's get into best hero, and I'm going to read our list as it is from worst to best. Beckendorf, Tyson, Thalia, Jason, Grover, Zoe, Clarice, Annabeth, Nico, Frank, Piper, Hazel, Percy, and Leo. And I have written here, maybe consider moving Leo, Annabeth, and Percy to different spots.
Leo's got to move down and Annabeth's got to move way up.
Yes.
Where do we want to put Leo?
Above Frank.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too.
Yeah.
And then Annabeth, I think, goes right under Percy.
Agreed.
I agree completely.
Oh, that was easy. All right, so I'm just going to read our new top 5, which goes Leo, Piper, Hazel, Annabeth, Percy, which I think is good.
Yeah.
And Leo will move around again soon, I'm sure.
Yeah, but Percy's back to
Nico.
being number 1, and I think it's right that Annabeth is number 2, and I heard you say that, Clara.
What did you say?
I said, so will Nico.
Yeah.
Nico also shall move soon.
I was almost wondering if you guys were going to argue for Annabeth over Percy.
I was thinking about it, but I adore Percy so much.
Yeah.
There's no way.
No way.
The problem is that while this was a really great book for her, and historically she's really good, she does not have enough still to make her number 1. Yeah.
I also just feel like the fact that Rick pulls off a goofy, heroic boy being so likable.
Yep.
I can't believe that I don't prefer a side character to him.
Yep.
That's incredible to me.
Yeah.
Well, and that we're now, 8 books in, and I think this is his best book. That's
just remarkable.
All right, best god from worst to best: Zeus, Apollo, Thanatos, Pan, Poseidon, Athena, Hephaestus, Hestia, Mars/Ares, Aphrodite, Mr. D, Artemis, Hermes, Hades, and Juno/Hera. Up for nominees to move or be added: Athena/Minerva, Dionysus/Bacchus, Aphrodite/Zeus, Venus, and Nemesis and Hercules. I'm just going to say I don't think Hercules should actually be on here, but...
Yeah, no.
Yeah. What do you want to start with?
We move who exists.
Okay. So what do you want to move? I want to move Athena/Minerva.
Yeah.
I would put her right under Mr. D. Who actually, Mr. D needs to move. Mr. D's
moving
too.
down.
Yeah. I would put Athena right under Artemis.
I agree.
Yep.
And then Mr. D and Aphrodite both need to move down, in my opinion. Right above Hestia? I
would actually move Aphrodite below Hestia and Mr. D between Hestia and Mars/Ares.
Actually, honestly, I still think Mr. D should be above Mars/Ares.
I think so too.
Okay, I'm fine with that.
Mr. D is just...
He has too much good stuff from before, even though I don't love Bacchus.
That's fair.
It is what it is.
That's fair.
You just said Aphrodite/Juno, by the way.
Oops. Oh, no.
I know where your mind is.
No.
/fic.
Hot.
That's a B.
And then where do we want to put Nemesis?
Do we want to?
I don't know if she...
I would put her in.
Where?
Above Zeus.
Where do...
Okay, that's fair.
Sure. I mean, we could put anyone there. That's like just a gaping hole between Zeus and Apollo. So, like, sure.
Yeah.
You could fit all of Tartarus between Zeus and Apollo.
All right, so the new list is Zeus, Nemesis, Apollo, Thanatos, Pan, Poseidon, Hephaestus, Aphrodite/Venus, Hestia, Mars/Ares, Mr. D/Bacchus, Athena/Minerva, Artemis, Hermes, Hades, and Juno/Hera. That is not getting easy to say. All right, now best baddie from worst to best: Circe, Atlas, Kelly, Medea, Dr. Thorne, Medusa, Polyphemus, Phineas, Chione, Ethan Nakamura, Kronos, King Minos, Gia, and Luke. And we have a lot of contestants this week with Arachne, Otis and Ephialtes, Chrysaor, and the Eidolons.
I nominate putting Arachne between King Minos and Gia.
I agree with that.
I was leaning towards her between Kronos and King Minos. But
you're outvoted.
But yeah, I was torn between above or below King Minos, so I'm fine with this.
I like her a lot.
Yeah, she's good.
I want Chrysaor on here.
I'll agree with that. He was exciting.
Can we put Chrysaor above Atlas?
I would put Chrysaor even above Kelly.
Okay.
Yeah, me too.
All right, I'm good with that. And then Otis and Ephialtes, I do want to put on here because I did enjoy them. They're the first giants that I enjoyed. I would put them above Atlas.
Yep.
Sure.
So our new list is Circe, Atlas, Ephialtes, and Otis. Kelly, Chrysaor, Medea, Dr. Thorne, Medusa, Polyphemus, Phineas, Chione, Ethan, Kronos, King Minos, Arachne, Gia, and Luke. This is going to be a very long list.
I mean, they're just going to keep growing and growing. Eventually, we're going to need to bring back our rule of picking and choosing how many people.
Well, I think at a certain, maybe when we're done with this series, we just make all of them top 10s and cut off anyone who's beyond
Yeah.
the top 10.
I think that's
That
a good
sounds
call.
good.
Yeah.
By Zeus.
All right. And then best real world locale. Right now we have Portland, Alcatraz, St. Louis Arch, Grand Canyon, Hoover Dam, the Wolf House, Smithsonian, Alaska, and New York City. Now, before we even introduce the new things, I want to put Alaska above New York City. I think that was a mistake because it's easy to do New York. New York is in everything. Alaska is special, and I'll always remember it.
All right, I buy that argument.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I feel like New York City is executed better because it's the entire book.
Yeah.
But you know what? Sure.
Cool.
I can.
Like Alaska.
So if anything, that shows how well Alaska was done, that even
Yeah.
though it takes up less pages, it was more heartfelt than New York was.
I just feel like Alaska is more memorable because I've seen New York in everything. And even though I think it was done really well here, it's like, well, yeah, New York's cool.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
Okay. I'll give
Agreed.
that to you.
Agreed.
yeah. And so the new ones are Rome, Atlanta, and Charleston.
Charleston shouldn't be on this list.
Okay,
Yep.
I'm fine with
Scratch Charleston.
that. I would put Atlanta above Alcatraz.
I agree.
Okay.
Yep.
And then Rome is interesting. Where do we think Rome should go?
I think it should go between the Smithsonian and New York City.
So, but then that would knock the Smithsonian out of the top 3. And I know that's like an arbitrary thing that only I really care about. but like,
I agree with Clara.
all right, fine. It was really good. So
I think Rome's better than Smithsonian, even though I think the Smithsonian is like, oh, it's a cool fight there, and I can picture it. But like Rome is like, they talk about so many different parts of Rome.
It does encapsulate a feeling, and
yes,
that is more important. So that currently to me is the most important stuff. That both Rome, New York, and Alaska, all 3 of those, really capture well.
Yeah. All right. So best book: Sea of Monsters, Lightning Thief, Titan's Curse, Battle of the Labyrinth, Son of Neptune, The Lost Hero, and The Last Olympian. Personally, this is number 1 for me, but let's talk about it.
For me, it's number 2.
For me, it's number 2.
You.
I would have. I will say, I'm sorry. This is my good place.
You're wrong. You're both wrong about this.
I don't think we are.
No, you're so wrong, though.
I am so torn, Dan. Okay, look, you each. I can be swayed either way.
Well, you
Convince
should be
me.
swayed to the right way, which is over here.
Don't listen to him mansplain. Feminism, Clara. This book is about girl power. Join me in making it number 2.
That's why it should be number 1. Come on.
No, I'm allowed to say that.
Annabeth is so good in this. Annabeth and Percy are both better in this book than they are in Last Olympian. And come on, the journey, the quest, seeing Chrysaor, we go to Rome, we have Atlanta and Phorcys. There's some good comedy with those fish horses. We have interest. Leo has a very interesting arc.
Yeah.
Who other than
Luke,
who and like Percy has some okay stuff, but it's better in Mark of Athena. And like,
stop. The stuff with the Oracle and the journey and the backstory is really good. Nico is really good. Nico's really good in Last Olympian,
but not as good as Annabeth is in this.
But Annabeth still has good stuff. And also, don't forget about how many half-baked things are kind of mashed into the Mark of Athena. Like how many things it's like, does this really serve a purpose?
Don't forget that Raina and Annabeth have this great friendship thing going on.
They do have a great friendship.
So do Piper and Annabeth with when she takes the bagel from Piper. That's really good.
That's cute. Yeah.
Again, I'm not actually. This isn't the hill even I'm willing to die on. It's just one of those things where, okay, let me put it this way.
It goes right into the thing in the thick of it. right in the thick of it.
Okay. The thing for me, Jason wasn't in The Last Olympian, and Nico was.
That's a point. That's a really good point.
Yeah, but this whole book is about saving Nico, and that's important too.
He's unconscious for the whole thing. He's unconscious and then feels guilt.
And like, look, this has like Arachne and Ephialtes and Otis and Gia and Chryse. Like, it has so many different cool villains. I even like Forces.
Okay, I actually think that gets exactly to the thing here where it feels like apples and oranges.
Yeah.
Because Last Olympian feels so tight.
Yeah.
Like, even though so much happens, it is such a narrative. Like Olga was saying, like with the flashbacks, with the, like it's such a movie, right?
Yeah.
Like it's a thing. And this is it's a sprawling epic
This
tale.
is a season of a TV show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's all in one book.
One amazing book with Percy and Annabeth better than they've ever been before.
I'm not going to even
I do
disagree
love
with
that.
you. I'm not going to disagree with you there at all.
Okay.
Come on,
It's up
Clara.
to you, Clara. I won't
This
be...
has Rome in it.
I'm gonna put it at number 1.
Yeah,
Yes.
I knew that Dan got... I'm not mad at that. I'm
we
okay with
can't
it.
have a Percy Jackson book stay at number 1. The Heroes of Olympus are better.
We'll see.
So, Mark of Athena forever, and I love it, and it's pretty.
What?
Number 1
Dan, what's gonna happen next time?
with House
How
of
are we
Hades.
gonna? Yeah, you and I feel like are gonna have it like a duel to the death.
Well, I don't like it as much, but I have no problem with anyone arguing it's a better book.
Okay,
Yeah.
good, because I will.
Yeah,
That's one of the only reasons
Yeah.
I'm putting Mark of Athena first.
You don't think
Yeah.
it'll stay at number 1?
And House of Hades is just like Tartarus is just a downer, but it's done very well. I'm just like
I love Tartarus.
I'm never excited to read House of Hades because I'm like, oh, it's gonna be sad. It's good, but in a really good way.
I love that.
Yeah.
God, I love the underworld. I love Nico.
Yeah.
Give me
I love
tragedy.
sad.
It's time for tragedy.
All right, if you want that, get ready.
I'm ready. I've got my boots on.
ready,
my
Olga?
tragedy boots for stomping on my feelings.
Also, if people are reading along with us, definitely read the Sword of Hades short story before you read the House of Hades, or you might be a little confused. Who's
You
to
might
say?
think you've lost your memory. I did.
Yeah. All right, guys. I think we did a fabulous ranking there. Thank you very much, everyone. And have a fabulous time while we read House of Hades.
And cry.
And may the gods be ever in your favor.